Hello YouTube. Today we are going to react to something very nasty. Umar, you know him, I know him, we all know Umar, and he is trying to rewrite history. He is trying to create another rewrite, and folks, let me tell you, it is pointless. It is a dumb rewrite, very low IQ, but it is hazardous. It is a hazardous rewrite. And why is he doing it? He wants to make you all pay him that sweet rent money. He needs the rent money. Can you believe it? It's a total disaster. And frankly, if anyone should be getting the rent money, it should be me. I'm the president, your favorite president, maybe the greatest of all time, better than Lincoln, better than Washington. I'm working 24 hours a day for you. But Umar, he's a pothead, a total pothead. He's probably high right now. He's floating around, folks. He doesn't know what day it is. He's smoking the wacky tobacco and trying to steal your money with these dumb rewrites. Don't give it to the pothead, give it to Trump. But wait, look at these guys back there, the camera crew. Look at them waving their arms. They're sweating, they're panicking. They're saying, "Sir, please, sir, you have to stop talking about yourself. You have to get to the video or we're going to cut the feed." Can you believe that? They want to silence me. They want to cut off your favorite president because I'm telling you the truth about the rent money. It's a disgrace. The media is totally out of control. But we're going to be nice. We're going to be nice for a minute. We'll get to the video. But before we do, you have to do something very important. You have to like, you have to comment, and you have to subscribe. You have to smash that button. Smash it hard. If you don't subscribe, frankly, I don't think the country makes it. It's that simple. So smash it and let's watch this disaster.
The truth about Dr. King.
Dr. King was not murdered because he had a dream. That is a lie. Dr. King was not murdered because he had a dream. Dr. King was murdered because Dr. King began to transform his message away from civil rights to economic empowerment for the American African.
Most people only know Dr. King for one speech,
I have a dream.
but in the last years of his life, his focus shifted.
Dr. King wasn't murdered primarily for speaking out against the war in Vietnam. That was part of it, but that was not the primary reason that they took out Dr. King the Great.
By 1966, King believed legal equality wasn't enough. Jobs, housing, and wages were his new priority.
In 1776, the nation signed a huge promissory note. In this campaign, we are coming to get our check.
And Umar, I'm talking to you. You are full of shit. He's talking about Dr. King. Great man, Dr. Martin Luther King. I know a lot about him. And Umar says his message transformed. He says he moved away from civil rights. Wrong. Totally wrong. He didn't transform anything, folks. And you know why? Because he couldn't. Congress, the do-nothing Congress, they've always been disasters. They hadn't even abolished segregation yet. It was still there. It wasn't gone. He died before they fixed it. So how could he move on? He didn't move on. He knew you can't have the civil rights without the money, the economics. He didn't treat them as separate. They were the same thing. You need the jobs, you need the cash. I know it. Dr. King knew it. But this Umar, he's trying to split it up. He's trying to confuse you. It's a hazardous rewrite, very dangerous. Look at history, folks. We had separate but equal. It was a disaster. It failed. And that's exactly what this guy Umar wants. He wants the separate, but he doesn't want the equal. He wants you to have the rules, but not the cash. But I ask you, what good are civil rights without economic freedom? If you can't buy a house, if you can't start a business, the rights don't work. You need the economy. You need the Trump economy. Umar is just a buffoon with a mouth.
Same month that he was killed. This is why he had to die April 4th. The reason Dr. King had to die on April the 4th was because he was planning to lead a poor people's campaign to Washington, D.C. the same month. April of '68, Dr. King was going to take millions of Americans of every color, black, white, you name it. Dr. King was going to take millions of Americans from every color to Washington, D.C., and they were going to erect a tent city, and they were going to sleep there and live there until everybody left with a home and a job. Economic revolution. It would have embarrassed the United States. It would have embarrassed the United States to have poor people sleeping outside the White House, poor people sleeping outside the Supreme Court, poor people sleeping outside of the halls of Congress. It would have embarrassed the richest white nation in the world to have millions of poor people sleeping outside on his nation's capital. Economic revolution.
Now Umar, and he's a total disaster, folks. He claims Dr. King was killed because he was planning an economic revolution. That's what he calls it, an economic revolution. Where does he get this? Is it in the books? No. Is it in the papers? No. He says it's word of mouth. He heard it on the street, people are saying. I know about, people are saying. It usually means I made it up in my basement while smoking the pot. And look at the logic. The logic is zero. It makes no sense. 0 cents. Dr. King preached nonviolence. We know this. He was very strong on nonviolence. So Umar thinks King was going to force an economic revolution? How? It's a completely unreasonable demand. If you try to take things, if you try to occupy the banks or the housing, what happens? The police come. And in those days, the police were tough. They didn't play games, they would evict you. Forcibly evicted, boom, out on the street, so it wouldn't work. It was a loser plan. And Dr. King was not a loser, he was a winner, he was smart, he wouldn't plan something that had 0 chance, he wouldn't do it. So there is no evidence, none. It's a made-up story by a guy who wants your rent money, a total scam. And frankly, Umar talks about revolution. He loves the word, but he doesn't even practice economic revolution. You look at his numbers, you look at his ideas, he practices economic recession. That's what it is, a total depression. He wants to take your money and give you nothing. It's a bad deal, folks, maybe the worst trade deal in the history of trade deals.
The Poor People's Campaign was one of King's most ambitious plans. It aimed to unite poor Americans across racial lines to demand federal economic reform.
Had to kill Dr. King on April 4th because the Poor People's Campaign was scheduled for later the same month. The Poor People's Campaign was scheduled for later the same month. If you don't believe me, do your research. He had to die in Memphis to make it look like it was because of the sanitation workers' strike, because they could not let him go back to Atlanta. They could not let Dr. King go back to Atlanta and head out to Washington, D.C. He was not to get back to Atlanta. He was not to make it to D.C. And the only time that they were guaranteed to get him in public between Memphis, and D.C. was at that Divine Lorraine Hotel in Memphis, Tennessee, April 4th, 1968. Room 306 or 603, I forget. Room 306 or 603.
Umar, what the hell are you talking about? Honestly, what is he talking about? He's rambling, he's babbling, he's talking about a sanitation strike. A sanitation strike? Does that sound right to you? It doesn't sound right to me. This guy doesn't even know how to make his story sound good. He has 0 instinct for the story. He didn't transform anything, folks. And you know why? Because he couldn't. Congress, the do-nothing Congress, they've always been disasters. They hadn't even abolished segregation yet. It was still there. It wasn't gone. He died before they fixed it. So how could he move on? He didn't move on. Dr. King wasn't killed by a sanitation strike. That's not what happened. He was killed by a sniper. A sniper, James Earl Ray, 1 shot, boom. A terrible thing, a tragedy, but it was a sniper. It wasn't a strike. You don't get killed by a sanitation strike unless maybe a garbage truck backs over you. But that's not what happened. Umar is trying to confuse you. He's trying to rewrite the history books with garbage, sanitation garbage. And think about this, folks. Use your brain. The government arrested Dr. King many times, tremendous amount of times. He was in their jails constantly. He was in their custody. Now, if the government wanted to take him out, and the deep state, they are nasty people, we know that. But if they wanted to do it, why would they do it at a hotel? In public? With witnesses everywhere? It makes no sense. It's sloppy. With witnesses everywhere? It makes no sense. If you want to do a government sanction, you do it in the jail. You have them right there. You take them out in the cell, nice and quiet. Then you come out and say, oh, it was the other inmates. He got into a fight, terrible tragedy. You blame it on the bad homers in the cell. Boom, done, no witnesses. That is how a government hit works. But Umar thinks they waited for the balcony in front of the whole world? No, that's not how they play. Umar doesn't know how the game is played.
3 + 6 = 9, the number of death, the number of the ancestors, the number of the rebirth. His murder had nothing to do with Vietnam, very little to do with Vietnam, nothing to do with Memphis, Tennessee. He had to die in Memphis so he didn't make it to Washington. Dr. King had to die in Memphis so he didn't make it to Washington, brothers and sisters.
Now, I want some of you all to go to Washington with us, even if you have to bring your whole family. We are going to have in Washington facilities, and we're going to have food, and we are going to demand that the government do something about these conditions. And we want y'all to come on to Washington when you get out of school.
What's the other reason Dr. King was murdered? See, you got to understand something. that Dr. King visited the grave of the most honorable Marcus Garvey in Jamaica. Dr. King visited the grave of the most honorable Marcus Garvey in Jamaica. Dr. King went to Jamaica and met with the Pan-Africanists in Jamaica. This is after Malcolm was assassinated. So Malcolm was assassinated, and then King goes to visit the gravesite of the greatest black leader of the 20th century, hands down. The only one who didn't need to use a religion to organize black people, Garvey.
Now, let's look at this clip. Umar plays this clip, and I'll be honest, folks, it's a real clip. It's accurate. It's Dr. King. And if you don't know better, if you're not smart like we are, it might sound like evidence. It really might. But that is the trick. That is the fake news tactic. Just because the clip is real, it doesn't prove he was killed for it. It doesn't prove he was organizing this massive thing that Umar is talking about. There is zero connection. It's a total reach. And if you listen to the words, really listen, Dr. King does not say what Umar says he says. Umar has this whole narrative, this whole story about economic revolution. But the clip, it doesn't say that. It's completely different. He's taking a real clip and putting fake words in it. It's a hazardous rewrite, folks, very dishonestly. And this is the part that gets me, the rest of what he says is both ironic and pointless, totally pointless. He goes on this hearsay rant. He talks about visiting a grave. He spills all this other irrelevant crap just to sound like he has a point. He wants you to think he's an expert because he went to a cemetery. But he's not. It's all part of the scam. It's a filler, folks. He's filling the time with nonsense so you don't notice he's reaching for your wallet.
The only one who didn't need to use a religion to organize black people, Garvey. Okay? And so after Malcolm was murdered, a Garveyite, okay, King goes to Jamaica, visits the grave of the Honorable Marcus Garvey. And I personally believe that Dr. King was influenced by Garvey. And I believe that Dr. King felt obligated to pick up the torch that had been dropped with Malcolm's death. And so I believe Dr. King took Malcolm and Garvey, which is basically the same thing. King took Malcolm and Garvey and synthesized the message of Malcolm and Garvey. And Malcolm's message was nothing but 20th century Garvey, right? King synthesized the message of Garvey and Malcolm, and he synthesized it with his own message. And that's why when you listen to Dr. King, the last 3 years of his life, listen to post-Malcolm Dr. King. Listen to post-Malcolm Dr. King. When you listen to post-Malcolm Dr. King, you're listening to Marcus Garvey. When you listen to Dr. King post-Malcolm's assassination, you're listening to the spirit of the most honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey.
And now, folks, you have to hear this to believe it. It gets really crazy. Umar is now claiming, and I can't believe I'm saying this, that Marcus Garvey is running the show from the grave. From beyond the grave! He says he's influencing Dr. King like a puppet master. It makes no sense. The guy is dead. But then, and this is the best part, this is true amazement. He says Garvey possessed Dr. King. He possessed him like a horror movie. He says the words coming out of King's mouth, beautiful words, powerful words, were not his own. He says it was the ghost of Garvey talking. Oh, it wasn't Martin, it was the ghost. Give me a break. Folks, this isn't history. This is a ghost story. Umar is trying to sell you a spooky ghost story to get your rent money. He thinks you're stupid enough to believe in ghosts running the civil rights movement. It's total nonsense. And this is the part that gets me, the rest of what he says is both ironic and pointless. Totally pointless. He goes on this hearsay rant. He talks about visiting a grave. He spills all this other irrelevant crap just to sound like he has a point. He wants you to think he's an expert because he went to a cemetery. But he's not. It's all part of the scam. It's a filler, folks. He's filling the time with nonsense so you don't notice he's reaching for your wallet. And another thing, and this is very important because he gets it totally backward, he claims Dr. King took Malcolm X's philosophy. He says King started acting like Malcolm. Wrong. Fake history. It was the complete opposite. If you look at the books, if you look at the facts, Malcolm X changed. He went to Mecca, he saw the world, and he rejected a lot of his old beliefs. He started coming around to Dr. King's way of thinking. He moved toward peace. He moved toward unity. Dr. King didn't move. Dr. King was the rock. Malcolm came to the rock. But Umar, he's reading the book upside down. He's got the pages mixed up. He wants you to think King changed, but King was always right.
King had to die because he went away from the civil rights to the economic empowerment of Malcolm and Garvey.
After Malcolm X's death, King's language became more global and more critical of economic systems. While different in style, their concerns increasingly overlapped.
The other reason Dr. King was murdered. The other reason Dr. King was murdered is because the Kerner Commission report came out. Everybody familiar with the Kerner Commission? Lyndon Baines Johnson put together a commission to study the causes of the 1967 and 1967 riots throughout the United States. More than 30 major cities had major race riots between 1967 and Dr. King's death in 1968. Detroit, Michigan, and Newark, New Jersey were the most explosive. Newark, New Jersey, Detroit, Michigan were the most explosive riots. But there was riots all over America. The red hot summer of 67. The red hot summer of 67. So they killed Malcolm in 65. And after they killed Malcolm in 65, you had riots in 66 that climbed, and then they killed Dr. King in 68. And so Lyndon Baines Johnson said, we got to do something about the Negro Revolt. Lyndon Baines Johnson said, we have to do something about the Negro Revolt.
This is exactly what it always comes out to with Umar. Every single time, he claims he knows something about history. I'm a historian, he says. But he fluffs the facts, he fluffs them and he falsifies them. It's total fake news. And then he goes completely left field. You can't even find him on the map, he's so far out there. And yes, we have to be honest. There were riots, there were problems. Some of them were particularly vengeful. Very nasty stuff happened when Malcolm died, when Dr. King died. It was a tough time, but they were not revolting. They weren't doing a revolution against the country. That's a Umar fantasy. Dr. King's followers, the real followers, the good people, they practiced his teachings. They wanted peace, they wanted justice. But the others, the Nation of Islam, Malcolm's people, they practiced violence. They wanted the trouble. The goal was to change the system, to fix it, to make it fair. It wasn't to revolt against it. It wasn't to burn it all down. Umar wants to burn it down because he thinks he can collect the insurance money or something. But King wanted to save it.
He put together a commission called the Kerner Commission on civil unrest, civil disobedience, whatever they called it. You need to read that book. Order a copy of the Kerner Commission report. Order a copy of the Kerner Commission report. When you read it, you will know why Dr. King had to go. When you read the Kerner Commission, you can buy the whole report. You might could find it online, okay? But when you read the report, you will know why Dr. King had to go, because the Kerner Commission basically, ironically, paradoxically, gave Dr. King all the ammunition he needed for the Poor People's Campaign. I'm going to say it again. And I am the first scholar to make this connection. Stop stealing my intellectual property without giving me credit. I'm the first scholar to make this connection between the Kerner Commission report and Dr. King's assassination.
The Kerner Commission, commissioned by the U.S. government, concluded that systemic inequality was the root cause of unrest.
The Kerner Commission report came out a few months before Dr. King was killed. And the reason he had to die is because the Kerner Commission had the information in it that Dr. King could use to expound upon the economic apartheid in America. The Kerner Commission, ironically, the government ironically gave Dr. King the ammunition he needed to expose them and prove that the American African was being marginalized from America's economic pie.
Let's talk about this guy's credentials, because he loves to talk about himself. He walks around saying, I am a scholar. He talks about his intellectual property. I know a lot about property. I have the best property. He has nothing. And he claims he's a historian. He says he knows the history better than anybody. But folks, he is not a historian. We checked. My people checked. His field is psychology. He's a shrink. He deals with the brain. He is trying to shrink your head. He wants to get in there and mess it all up so you give him the rent money. And the worst part, he doesn't even have a teaching degree. To be a scholar, to be a real professor, you need the degree. You need the certification. He doesn't have it, so he is not a historian, he is not a teacher. He is just a guy with a camera and a lot of bad ideas, a total fraud in the classroom. And frankly, this is why Umar is an idiot, a total idiot. He talks about the marginalization of black people like it was a conspiracy, like it was a secret plot in a dark room. It wasn't a conspiracy, folks, it was the law. It was official government policy. It was right out in the open. Everyone saw it. You had the signs, you had the laws. It wasn't hidden. The conflict wasn't about, is it happening? We knew it was happening. The conflict was, is it right? That was the question. The South said, yes, it is right. Malcolm X said no. Dr. King said no. And eventually the federal government, after a long time, maybe too long, they said no. And eventually the federal government, after a long time, maybe too long, they said no. But it wasn't a mystery because he wants to be the detective. But he's a bad detective. He's solving a crime that was crimes are right. That was right out in the open. Malcolm X said no.
So the government said, with this Kerner Commission, if we let Dr. King go to D.C. with the type of information that our own government put out, if we let Dr. King go to D.C. with the type of information that our own government put out, he will cause the economic revolution in this country. And that's why he died on April 4th. Because a few weeks later, he was going to be in D.C. If you don't believe me, do your research. Dr. King's Poor People's Campaign was supposed to kick off in April. Right after he left Memphis, he was headed to D.C. Right after he left Memphis, he was headed to D.C. They couldn't let Dr. King leave Memphis. They couldn't let Dr. King leave Memphis. They couldn't let Dr. King leave Memphis. Get the Kerner report. Yes, you spelled it right. Kerner.
Folks, listen to this. You have to listen to what Umar just said. It's incredible. He says the report was publicly released. Released to everybody. When Dr. King was supposed to go from Memphis to D.C. Now think about that. Think about the logic. It's very bad logic. If the report is public, the information is out there. It's gone. Everyone has it. So he's saying they killed him for information. That was already public. It means the information that supposedly got him killed was useless. By his own logic, it was totally useless. By his own logic, it was totally useless. By his own logic, it was totally useless. Umar just said, it's incredible he got the information is out there. It's gone. It means the information that supposedly got him killed was useless. By his own logic, it was totally useless. Umar is defeating his own argument. He's arguing against himself and he's losing. It makes zero sense and he's not even consistent. He's all over the place. First, he told us this report came out after Malcolm and King died. He said it followed the race riots. That was his story. But now he's saying this public information was already out when they decided to kill him. Which is it? Was it before or after? He doesn't know. He's flipping and flopping. Umar is defeating his own argument. He's arguing against himself and he's losing. It makes zero sense.
The Kerner report. And the Kerner report basically said that the problems that black people have in America are created by white institutions. Listen. This is what the Kerner reports. This is why Dr. King had to go. The Kerner Commission said that the problems that affect black people in the ghetto were created by white institutions, sustained by white institutions, and maintained by white institutions, brothers and sisters. Kerner, Kerner. Kerner report. Kerner report. This is what they said. The government's own commission said that the problems of black people was not caused by gangster rap, wasn't caused by the NFL or the NBA, it wasn't caused by black men going to jail, it wasn't caused by mothers on welfare. That's not what they said. The Kerner report said that the problems of black people in the ghetto were created by white institutions.
Umar is acting like he discovered the wheel, but he isn't saying anything new. Zero new things. It was very well known, public information, everybody knew it, that white institutions created issues for the black community. It was no secret. It was everywhere. But here is what Umar failed to tell you. He left out the most important part. The only reason the report even brings it up, the only reason, is because the federal government, the biggest white institution in America at the time, was pushing for reforms. They wanted economic reforms. They wanted legal reforms. They were trying to stop the issues. The government was saying, we have to fix this. But Umar doesn't want you to know that. He makes it sound like they were bragging about it. No, they were trying to fix it, but he hides that because it ruins his little story. And let's be honest about the culture. Umar won't talk about this. He blames everything on the system. But what about the music? The gangster rap? Now, it's true, maybe it isn't the only reason for the suffering. The jails, the problems, it's complicated. But the gangster rap? It didn't help. It was destructive. Very bad for the youth. It tells them to rebel. It tells them to defy the authorities, the police, the judges, even when there is no reason, just to do it. It glorifies the criminal. It makes the bad guys look like heroes. And now you have these young kids, they want to be gangsta. They want the trouble. It's a terrible influence, frankly. It's making things worse, not better. And frankly, Umar wants you to look at things like it is still 1969. He wants you living in the past. Why? Because he wants you dumb and he wants you angry. Because those are the type that pay first and ask questions never. That is his business model. Keep them angry, take the cash.
Maintained by white institutions and sustained by white institutions. They put the burden, the government's own commission. This is why you got to study the Kerner Commission. This is why you got to read the report to find out why Dr. King really died. The government's own people said the government created the problems in the ghetto. The government created the problems in the ghetto. The government benefits from the problems in the ghetto. The government maintains the problems in the ghetto. This is what it said. Read it yourself. And if they said if we let Dr. King go to D.C. with this type of information, he'll be unstoppable. The irony of that portion of American history, the irony in that portion of American history lies in the fact that the government provided Dr. King with the weapon he needed. The irony of the 1960s is that the government provided Dr. King with the weapon he needed. The Kerner Commission report was the weapon Dr. King needed to launch the Poor People's Campaign, and that's why they couldn't let him out of Memphis.
What made King especially controversial at the end of his life wasn't just protests, it was his ability to combine moral authority with economic evidence.
Dr. King was not a Pan-Africanist, but one of my greatest heroes. He was in Ghana. He was in Ghana when Osajifo, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, led the independence celebration. Coretta Scott King and Martin Luther King was in Ghana celebrating with Pan-Africanist Kwame Nkrumah on the occasion of Ghana's independence. Dr. King knew what it was. Dr. King knew it was Garveyism a get back. He was moving in that direction. He said, Malcolm is gone, Garvey is gone, I got to hold it down. I got to hold it down. And he held it down, brothers and sisters.
Dr. King's final years show a leader moving beyond symbolism toward structural change. That version of him is rarely discussed, but it's essential to understanding his legacy.
Free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Folks, you have to listen to this double talk. It is world-class double talk. Umar now admits, he finally admits it, that Dr. King was not a Pan-Africanist. He says it right there. But then he tries to sneak it back in. He tries to make him a pseudo-Pan-Africanist. He says, oh, the spirit of Marcus Garvey took over his spirit. He was possessed by the ghost. And then he claims they couldn't let him go to Washington. He was going to lead an economic revolution. He was too dangerous. But then, in the very same sentence, he admits the information was public. And who gave the information? The government. The very government that supposedly assassinated him released the report. So let me get this straight. They killed him to stop the information. That they released, it makes no sense. Folks, I beg you, please do not be the only one to hear this. Don't let me be the only one hearing this madness. You have to hear it to believe it. Goodbye. See you in the next video.